One day, just before a girl's 10th birthday, she was sent on a short errand. Years later, when she finally shared what happened, she chose not to use her real name. Online, she goes by Sweet Mercy. One afternoon, Sweet Mercy walked to the corner store with a $5 bill folded tight in her hand. Her mum needed a jar of spaghetti sauce. It was a routine trip, one she had made before. She bought the jar, stepped back outside, and started home. Halfway down the sidewalk, a man fell into step beside her. He walked comfortably close, matching her pace. "Hi," he said. "My name is Dr. Ramsey. I'm a pediatrician. Do you know what a pediatrician is?" Sweet Mercy didn't answer. She kept walking, staring straight ahead, hoping silence would make him lose interest. It didn't. He talked the entire way, about what a pediatrician did, about how she was almost too old to need one, about her hair, about the candy jar in his office and the suckers he kept for kids, about her parents, about her name. When her house came into view, Sweet Mercy ran, up the back steps, through the kitchen door. She didn't look back. At the time, she thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. Not long after that day, the man began appearing near the house. At first, it seemed harmless. He would drive past slowly in a blue Ford Galaxy, smiling and waving through the window. Sweet Mercy told her mum, who brushed it off. Maybe he worked nearby. Maybe he lived in the area. Then the phone calls started. They came several times a day. At first, the children didn't understand what the caller was saying. The calls were short and confusing. Eventually, Sweet Mercy's father called her into the living room and sat her down. He asked her about the walk home from the store. He told her she wasn't in trouble. Then he asked a question she couldn't answer. "If you didn't talk to him," he said, "how does he know your name?" Sweet Mercy didn't know. What the family learned next made things worse. The man knew her sister's name too. From that point on, neither girl was allowed to answer the phone. One night, one of the older brothers listened closely during a call and realized what the man was saying. He was threatening to hurt Sweet Mercy. Later, he threatened her sister as well. Their father called the police. At the time, there was little they could do. The advice was always the same. Call back if you tried something. So their father called someone else, an old friend who was a police officer. For the next month, that officer walked Sweet Mercy to school and brought her home again. She wasn't allowed outside alone. She couldn't play in the yard. She couldn't walk to the store. Life narrowed to school, home, and supervision. When access to Sweet Mercy disappeared, the man escalated. One afternoon, her mother, siblings, and sister were in the kitchen when one of the boys noticed movement in the garage. A moment later, the man came running out. Her brothers chased him through the yard and into the nearby trees. He vanished before they could catch him. The police were called again. Nothing came of it. All they had was a description and a name no one believed was real. A few weeks later, the family woke up to find their dog hanging from the side porch. She was a German Shepherd, born the same day as Sweet Mercy. The loss devastated the household. Police ruled it an accident. No one in the house believed that. After that, the phone calls changed. The man began describing the house. He talked about who was home and who wasn't. When one of the boys lied and said their father was there, the man calmly corrected him. He described the kitchen window and how it could be opened from the outside with a knife, even when locked. He talked about the French doors in the living room and how the lock could be worked if you jiggled it just right. That night, Sweet Mercy's father hammered carpenter nails into the bottom of the doors. One evening, both parents were out. Two brothers were at a roller rink. One younger brother slept on the living room floor. Sweet Mercy and her sister stayed up late, watching television. Without warning, the top of the French doors swung inward. For a brief moment, Sweet Mercy saw a silhouette. The nails held. The door snapped shut. They ran upstairs. Halfway up, they remembered their little brother still asleep downstairs. They moved back down quietly, lifted him, and locked themselves into a bedroom without turning on the light. From the darkness, they watched the yard. Later, there was knocking at the back door. A voice called out, "Is this the Mercy residence? I have a pizza delivery." Sweet Mercy's sister shouted back, that she could see he didn't have a pizza and that she was calling the police. The man left. When the brothers returned home, they searched the yard. They didn't find him. No one called the police. Each person took a knife from the kitchen and tried to act normal. At one point, one brother went into the kitchen to make cereal. He felt watched. He moved closer to the kitchen door, trying to see past the glare on the glass. He stepped closer, then closer again. When he cupped his hands around his eyes, he finally saw him. Dr. Ramsey stood inches away on the other side of the glass, smiling. The brother turned to yell. When he looked back, the man was gone. The next night, the family sat at the table playing cards. One brother said he couldn't shake the feeling that any second there would be pounding on a door or window. Almost immediately after he finished speaking, it happened. 3 loud blows on the window behind him. By the time anyone reached the door, the man had disappeared again. Weeks later, during recess, Sweet Mercy was on the playground when she saw the blue Ford Galaxy moving slowly past the school. The man smiled. He waved. He called her by name. She ran to her teacher, who took her inside immediately. That same day, the school received a phone call from a man claiming to be her father, saying he was on his way to pick her up. He wasn't. One night, not long after, Sweet Mercy woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen. Her father was sitting alone at the table in the dark. A gun rested in front of him. He was exhausted, angry, tired of waiting for something worse to happen while he was gone. Sweet Mercy sat with him quietly for a while before he sent her back to bed. The ordeal lasted about 18 months. Then it stopped. The phone calls ended. The drive-bys stopped. The man vanished from their lives. Years later, when Sweet Mercy shared this story online, she learned what the man had been telling her parents during those calls, that he was going to rape and kill her, that there was nothing they could do about it. She never learned what happened to him. Sometimes she wonders if the waiting ended that night in the kitchen. She doesn't know, and she isn't sure she wants to. In 2012, during the summer, a couple we'll call Rachel and Jonathan decided to go to the movies. They were newly married and still living like college students. Money was tight, but that didn't matter much to them. There was a small movie theater just down the street from their apartment with cheap tickets, and most weekends they went there with their friends. One Thursday night, Rachel got a call inviting them to the midnight premiere of the newest Batman movie. She had just finished a 12-hour shift and was exhausted. For a moment, she considered staying home, but she didn't want to miss out, and it was a movie she had wanted to see for a while. Staying up late didn't seem like a big deal. They met their friends at the theater around 10:30 p.m. As they walked inside, they passed large cardboard cutouts of Batman and Catwoman. The smell of buttery popcorn filled the lobby. Above the ticket booth, an electronic board listed the movies in bright letters. The midnight showing of The Dark Knight Rises was already posted. One of their friends had bought the tickets earlier that day, worried they might sell out. They skipped the line and went straight to the ticket taker, who smiled and pointed them toward Theatre 9 on the right side of the lobby. Rachel would later think about that walk across the patterned carpet, about how ordinary it felt, about how crowded and loud the theatre was, about how there was no sign that anything was wrong. The hallway curved like a wide U, and Theatre 9 was the largest screening room in the building. When they entered, the screen was grey and motionless. The movie hadn't started yet, but nearly every seat was already filled. At first, it looked like they wouldn't find seats together. Then, one of their friends spotted 5 empty seats in the same row, a few rows up from the flat section near the screen. They hurried up the stairs and filled in quickly. Jonathan sat down first. Rachel sat beside him. Their friends filled the remaining seats, with one of them taking the aisle. They talked and joked while they waited. After a while, their friends went back out to the lobby for drinks and popcorn, leaving Rachel and Jonathan alone. The lights were still bright, and Rachel found herself watching the crowd. There were Batman shirts and hoodies everywhere. One person wore a mask and a shirt with an attached cape. There were children in the audience too, which didn't seem unusual. It was summer, and there was no school the next day. One child stood out to her. a small blonde girl with blue eyes, sitting a few seats down in their row. She kept getting up and heading toward the lobby, each time returning with more snacks. The room felt energetic. Eventually, the lights dimmed and the previews began. A short animation played, reminding everyone to silence their phones and take note of the emergency exits. Rachel glanced at the glowing green exit signs on either side of the screen without really thinking about them. When the movie started, the theater erupted in cheering and applause. The opening scenes caught her attention at first, but exhaustion caught up with her. She had been awake for nearly 20 hours. During the slower parts, she closed her eyes, drifting in and out. When she opened them again, Bruce Wayne was on a computer screen. That was the last scene of the movie she would ever see. A loud bang erupted from the left side of the theater. It startled her so badly that she screamed. A sharp, unfamiliar smell filled the air. At first, she thought someone had thrown fireworks into the crowd. Then she noticed movement near the front of the screen. A dark silhouette stood against the bright image. Flashes of light burst from the figure. For a moment, everything slowed. Sound dropped away. Rachel couldn't move. She couldn't think. It felt like her mind had shut down completely. Jonathan understood instantly. He grabbed her and pulled her to the floor, covering her with his body. Sound rushed back all at once. Gunshots echoed through the theater. People screamed. The movie kept playing, layered over the chaos. Rachel realized the flashes she had seen were bullets. She lay there, unable to do anything but wait. Shrapnel struck her head, tearing away a chunk of her hair. When she reached up to check the spot, hot pieces of metal fell into her hand. Tear gas burned her eyes and lungs. The smell of gunpowder and blood filled the air. When the gunfire stopped, someone shouted for everyone to run. They bolted down the stairs and across the front of the screen toward a glowing exit sign. They crammed into a small closet-like space near the door, blinded by gas and shock, slamming their hands against the walls while trying to find it. Rachel's fingers finally closed around a cold metal handle. She pushed with everything she had. The door flew open. Streetlight flooded their eyes as they spilled onto the concrete outside, stumbling and falling over one another. One of their friends lost a flip-flop just beyond the doorway. As they ran, Rachel looked down and saw her legs covered in blood. She thought it came from a spilled water bottle, until she turned around. The blood was Jonathan's. He had been shot in the leg. The damage was catastrophic. He collapsed just outside the theater, unable to move any farther. Leo and another young man dragged him away from the building as Rachel screamed for help. Construction workers nearby heard her and ran over. Jonathan lay on the ground, bleeding heavily, a puddle forming beneath him. Rachel tore off her shirt and pressed it against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Sirens filled the night. Jonathan was taken to the hospital just in time. Rachel wandered the front of the theater afterward, alone, surrounded by strangers covered in blood that wasn't theirs. Police lights flashed everywhere. The parking lot was locked down. It was cold. She was still in shock. By morning, she found the hospital where Jonathan had been taken. He was alive. The next day, after a few hours of sleep on a hospital couch, she learned what had happened inside the theater. 12 people had been killed. More than 70 others were injured. Early reports had placed the death toll higher, but 12 was the final number. The little blonde girl from their row did not survive. She had been shot multiple times and died inside the theater, only a few feet from where Rachel and Jonathan had been lying. A police officer later testified that he tried to save her, carrying her out and rushing her to a hospital. During that testimony, he broke down and cried. Tommy had been rushed to a different hospital in the back of a police car. He underwent surgery and made a full recovery. Doctors said the bullet had narrowly missed his hip bone, his bladder, and his urinary tract. Jonathan had lost nearly half his blood. Surgeons told Rachel that if he had arrived any later, he would have died. He required multiple blood transfusions and spent 21 days in the hospital. Doctors tried to save his leg, but the damage was too severe. In the end, it had to be amputated. With time, Rachel, Jonathan, and their friends learned how to live again. They recovered as much as they could. The trauma never disappeared, but it dulled. The shooting itself was horrifying, But Rachel later said that wasn't the part that stayed with her the most. The part that haunted her was the man who did it. She learned about him during the murder trial that followed. She watched much of it on television. He had been studying neuroscience in California, intelligent, quiet. According to testimony, he became obsessed with killing people. He dropped out of school, moved to her state, and deliberately chose that theater. Before the shooting, he had considered hiding along remote mountain trails and attacking people there, dragging them into the woods. He abandoned that plan and focused on the theater instead. He watched it for months. On the night of July 20th, he arrived posing as a normal moviegoer. He bought a ticket, sat among the audience. At some point, he slipped out through a side exit, returned to his car, put on body armor, and came back inside with his weapons. Rachel never saw his face that night. She saw only a dark silhouette against the screen. Later, she realized he could have been there on all those other movie nights, sitting nearby, standing in the lobby, completely unnoticed. That realization shattered her sense of safety, because now she understood something she could never forget. You never really know what the stranger next to you is planning. Between 1995 and 2002, a woman we'll call Samantha had a friend who slowly unraveled her sense of what was normal. At the time, she didn't recognize the danger. Not immediately. It didn't begin with threats or violence. It began the way bad friendships often do, with intensity, attention, and a sense that something was slightly off, but easy to excuse. Samantha grew up in northern Indiana and attended a large public high school. During her senior year, a new student transferred in from the local Catholic high school. Her name was Hannah. Transferring that late was unusual, and people noticed. Hannah explained it herself. She said she had been expelled after a fight with another girl over a boy. According to her, the other girl had lied, accused her of attacking her, and gone to the police. A restraining order had been issued. Hannah said none of it was true. She said she had never tried to hurt anyone. Samantha believed her. After graduation, Samantha stayed in Indiana for college. Hannah went to Florida. They lost touch for a while. Then one day, a friend from Samantha's dorm mentioned something strange. She had run into a guy from their hometown, someone who had attended the same Catholic school Hannah came from. He told her about an incident from years earlier. 2 girls had been fighting over him. Neither one had ever dated him. Both believed they were in a secret relationship with him. One of those girls had been Hannah. The next summer, both women were back in town. Samantha spent time with Hannah casually. Eventually, she brought up what she had heard. Hannah said she would tell her what really happened. They went back to Hannah's house. In her bedroom, Hannah reached into the back of her closet and pulled out a stack of books. One was about using psychological tricks to get revenge on people. Another had a cartoon figure pulling its hair out. Across the front, in large letters, was a word Samantha had never heard before: gaslighting. Hannah explained it calmly. She said it was about making someone doubt reality, convincing them that things they remembered never happened, making them believe they were imagining things. Then she described what she had done. Hannah said she had a crush on a boy named Mike. When she saw him talking to another girl, Julie, she became jealous. Julie was popular, pretty, a cheerleader. Hannah said she hated everything about her. She decided to see if she could push Julie into killing herself. She pretended to be her friend and got her phone number. This was before cell phones were common. Hannah recruited a boy from her church who had a crush on her. In exchange for sexual favors, he pretended to be Mike on the phone. He told Julie to keep their relationship secret. Hannah slipped handwritten notes into Julie's locker and signed Mike's name. Fake dates were arranged at the mall and the movies. Mike never showed up. Hannah recorded a mixtape and whispered phrases like, "You should die," and "kill yourself" between songs. When Julie noticed, Hannah denied hearing anything. Her brother backed her up, telling Julie she was imagining it. Julie's parents eventually confronted Mike's family. Mike had no idea what they were talking about. Julie was publicly humiliated. Rumors spread that she was unstable. Hannah said she loved that part. until Julie's parents checked the phone bill. Every anonymous call came from Hannah's house. When Julie confronted her at school, a fight broke out in the stairwell. Julie said Hannah screamed that Mike was her secret boyfriend and tried to push her over the railing. Hannah denied it. She said it was an accident. She wasn't ashamed, only annoyed that she'd been caught. Years passed. That summer, Hannah claimed she was dating a man named Derek. She told Samantha it was a secret affair, that he was deeply in love with her, that they were sneaking around behind his girlfriend's back. At a party, Derek screamed at Hannah to leave him alone. Someone had been making anonymous calls to him and his girlfriend. He traced the number. It was Hannah. She admitted she had tried to break them up. Later, a mutual friend suggested there may never have been a relationship at all. After Derek, Hannah spiraled. One night, Samantha took her to a bar. Hannah flirted with a much older man sitting alone. She had recently bought a cell phone, back when they were still a novelty. Instead of giving the man her number, Hannah typed a phone number into her phone and handed it to him. He asked what she wanted him to say. She told him. He made crude, humiliating comments to whoever answered, laughed, and handed the phone back. Hannah paid him $20. She said the woman deserved it for stealing her boyfriend. A year later, Hannah was back living with her parents. She had been kicked out of her dorm after another accusation and never finished her degree. She became fixated on a former friend named Kelly, who was dating a man named Dan. Hannah insisted Kelly was dangerous, manipulative. She said Kelly had an STD and would hurt him. One night, police cars sat outside Hannah's house. Hannah said Kelly had accused her of something terrible. The story came out slowly. Hannah had invited Kelly to a scenic overlook. They smoked marijuana. Hannah asked her to look at something near the edge. Kelly said Hannah grabbed her and tried to push her off. They were nearly 100 feet up. Hannah said it was an accident. She claimed she lost her balance. Police did nothing. People began talking. Samantha distanced herself. Hannah moved to Minneapolis in 1998. Samantha thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Hannah called a year and a half later. She said she was in love. She said she had met a man named Dan, the same Dan from years earlier. She said he introduced her to punk rock and heroin. She insisted she was in control. She wasn't. During a visit home, Hannah bought a cell phone at the mall and registered it under Dan's name. Later, Samantha called the number. The voicemail greeting was Dan's voice. Hannah lied and said it was a coincidence. Months later, Hannah nearly killed another woman. She invited a friend from Indiana to move in with her, lied about Dan cheating, isolated her, controlled her access to information. When the woman decided to leave and confront Dan in person, Hannah panicked. She pressured her into trying heroin, injected her with a massive dose. When the woman stopped breathing, Hannah pretended everything was fine, hung up on 911, tried to convince the other roommate that nothing was wrong. The woman survived, barely. Hannah claimed heroin psychosis and went to rehab instead of prison. Samantha didn't know the full truth yet. She learned it later, during a trip to Minneapolis, from Hannah's former roommate. That was when everything made sense. Hannah had erotomania, a fixed delusion that someone was secretly in love with her. Everyone else was an obstacle. And eventually, Samantha became one too. Hannah showed up at Samantha's apartment one evening without warning, 8 hours from Atlanta. When Samantha opened the door, Hannah's hand was already inside her purse. She pulled out a purple and black revolver. She claimed it was for protection. Revolvers don't have safeties. After that, the calls began. Anonymous threats. Three-way calls with men screaming accusations. Claims that Samantha was hurting Dan. Then Samantha called the old number Hannah once gave her. The voicemail greeting was Samantha's own voice. Everything finally clicked. Hannah appeared again the next day, screaming outside Samantha's apartment. Samantha refused to open the door. Hannah claimed Dan had killed himself. He hadn't. That was the last time Samantha ever saw her. Samantha changed her number, moved, cut ties with anyone who might know Hannah. The last she heard, Hannah was fixated on someone new. Alright guys, that will be it for today. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss next week's upload. I drop new stories every week, so there's always something coming. I'll see you in the next one.